everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Cassie Riva. I'm the events coordinator at an Unlikely Story bookstore in Plainville, Massachusetts. Before we start, here's a couple of technical tips. Any questions for the authors can be written in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd like to buy Michael Buckley's books, there's a green button at the bottom of your screen that's going to take you to our website. And when you purchase his books with us, you're going to receive a signed bookplate while supplies last. I am delighted to introduce New York Times bestselling author Michael Buckley. Michael grew up in Ohio, where he graduated from Ohio University. Shortly after, he moved to New York City, interning for CBS's The Late Show with David Letterman. He then worked as a stand-up comic and as a TV and ad copywriter. He's the creator of the popular middle grade series, The Sisters Grimm and NERDS. Michael has been on the New York Times bestseller list 30 times so far, and he's also the co-creator, writer, and executive producer of Cartoon Network's Robotomy. Tonight, Michael is going to share the second installment in his FINNIVERSE series, Finn and the Time-Traveling Pajamas. The book features monsters, holograms, and a whole bunch of action-packed fun. Interviewing Michael tonight is the New York Times bestselling author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series and owner of an Unlikely Story bookstore and cafe, Jeff Kinney. Michael, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi.
Right. Hello.
Look at us. Look at us.
Look at us.
Yeah.
Michael, as the kids would say, it's been a minute. The last time I saw you, you were belting out Rebel Yell in a karaoke bar.
Yes. Well, you know, to be honest, you can kind of see me doing that every night. It doesn't really have to be in a karaoke bar. I'd like to also point out to everybody watching that Jeff is really an amazing singer. You have a really great voice, and like I remember sitting there, and you picked some Journey song. I forget which one it was, and I remember sitting there going, "Man, this is gonna suck." And then you were just so good, and then I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. So it was, we did a song together. I forget which one it was.
Oh, good. It will come to me by the end. You know what's really funny is that anybody that's ever complimented my singing, which I think I have a serviceable voice, I always say, yeah, but would you pay to come hear me perform? And they always say,
that's true, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
I think you might be able to make some money doing it. You know? And you never know, like maybe a wedding band.
Maybe,
like that, yeah.
Maybe for a second marriage.
Yeah. I've gotten people to pay to watch me do all kinds of things. So it's don't sell yourself too short. Yeah.
Michael, I have to say, I absolutely loved both books in your series so far. It's like they're so funny, so imaginative. And I'm just so impressed by your writing. I'm envious of your imagination. I wanted to hear about the origins of this series.
Well, you know, most things that I write have a tendency to come from something that happened to me when I was a kid or some kind of family member. And my mother is a lovely woman, but not a great cook. And like I remember one time when we were kids, she was going to make us some Kraft macaroni and cheese, and she put all the ingredients in the pot at once. You know, that's like a thing you have to time out. You have to make the pasta soft. You have to put, but she did it all at once. That's the kind of cooking that we would get. So every day at lunch was, it could be something really pleasant, or it could be something really terrible. There were times when I would open it up and there'd be like mayonnaise and pickle sandwiches, that kind of bizarre thing. You not only do you not want to eat, but you don't want your friends to see you looking at. I was always the kid that nobody wanted to trade lunch stuff with. So I think just that idea that like lunch, at least in the first book with the lunchbox, is that there was always this air of mystery, a building of suspense. I mean, I never knew what was going to be in that lunchbox. And I think that was the germ of the idea, was like, that sometimes it's an unhappy surprise. And So having a lunchbox that has a very unhappy surprise, like a wormhole to another universe, and there's giant bugs coming out of it. And then with the second book, I realized how much fun it was just making the poor kid suffer a little bit. Because the first lunchbox is got unicorns on it, and it's very silly. And then this one, it's like I've got to make him embarrassed even more. So I put him in these cowboy pajamas that happen to be a time machine.
Right. I was just blown away when I saw the cover of the first book. I was like, oh yeah, that's a winner. And then when I saw the cover and title, especially on this book, I was like, man, that's really good stuff. This is
Thanks.
A really good series. And I wanted to know, we grew up in the 80s. There was a lunchbox culture, an unironic lunchbox culture, right? It was important. It was important what we had on our lunchboxes because that said who we were. So what was your lunchbox? Did you have one that really telegraphed a message about you?
I had 3 that come to mind.
Yeah.
Because you had a new one every year. One was Charlie's Angels. I have no idea what that said about me. Just that maybe I had a crush on Farrah Fawcett. The second one was Star Trek.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I still think has incredible street cred. And then the third one was the A-Team.
Oh no! Okay, that really spans your whole 70s to 80s. I think I understand who you were in between. You might have had one lunchbox a year, but we did. Basically in the Kinney household, once you got your lunchbox, you were committed until it rusted all the way out. And we
wow.
I had a Walt Disney World lunchbox, and it just. I think Mickey Mouse eventually got a rust hole in his ear, and that was the end of that. I love the interplay between the characters, particularly that of Lincoln and Finn. Can you tell us how their relationship gets started in the first book for those who haven't read it yet?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the first book, Finn is the new kid in school, and Lincoln is also the new kid in school. But their approach to their new educational environment is very different. Finn wants to keep his head down. He's not happy about being there. He wants to go back to the town that they lived in before. So there's a little bit of anger and frustration in him. And then Lincoln has been kicked out of every good school in the Hudson Valley. So you learn pretty quickly that he's doing it on purpose because his home life is troubled and he is trying to get his father's attention. So he goes to school and he's just become the biggest bully in the school. And he finds Finn and makes him his target. And that's I think a pretty common thing you see in a lot of kids' books. But what I think makes it different is that Lincoln has a reason he's doing it. Yeah. And when he gets caught, he's incredibly honest about it. He's totally telling the principal, yes, I jumped on him outside, and this bewilders Finn, who really just wants to get out of the trouble. And so that relationship of them, and the principal decides that he's going to turn them into friends because this is what his mom used to do when he was a kid. Mom would lock him in his bedroom with his brothers until they could get along. Which is something that happened to me. But this is in the school environment. So he locks the 2 boys in his office and says, you're not leaving until you're friends. And that's when the craziness starts.
Yeah. What's funny is that I've gone to a lot of elementary schools and middle schools. And of course, these days, there's so much awareness about bullying. I would say when I was growing up, bullying was underground, and it was really clear who the bullies were and who the non-bullies were. Like my kids have just gone all the way through now their high school experience, and they would say there wasn't a single bully, that they encountered throughout their education, and that just astounds me. Did you grow up in a world of avoiding the bully minefield?
Oh yeah, I mean. I mean, it's nice. I'm like 6'3". I'm 195 now,
Yeah.
but I
Okay.
wasn't like. I mean, I was the skinniest kid in the world.
Yeah.
Gangly, hunched over. So I was like, clearly the person that you want to mess with. And that was really what happened, is that I was constantly surrounded. Like each year, I think a different bully decided, I wonder if they drew straws to see who was going to get me. But I think what saved me really was my sense of humor. That I could be funny in class. I was funny on my feet. And I think that eventually these kids decided that it was better to be laughing with me than pushing me off the swings. So,
Right.
but yeah, there were definitely bullies. And it was, they were everywhere. I don't even know if the teachers and staff were really aware of it. I would have to think they were in some way. But what do you do? It's like there's 100 bullies in the school, but now it's like my son is in middle school. He's about to go to high school, and if I asked him who's bullying him, is somebody picking on you, it would probably be like, well, I built this castle in Minecraft and Edgar came in and knocked it down, and that would be his bullying experience.
I remember being a kid in middle school, and the bully, his name was Mark. We were all on the top row, like the bleachers were collapsed, and then he went down the line and punched every kid in the leg as hard as he could, and we all just basically sat there and waited our turn. And then the bell rang, and it was my turn next. And he said, "Okay, everybody, tomorrow just get back in the same, configuration."
Well, he was looking for your cooperation.
Yeah, I did not go to school the next day.
That's management material, right? He's probably running some huge corporation.
Right, yeah, probably. One of the things you do really, really well is you write great girl characters. And I love Julep. She's a great, complex character. And I really love Kate, Finn's younger sister. Tell me I got that right. Her name is Kate.
Kate, yeah.
Oh, okay, because I did the audiobook. So at the beginning of the new book, there's a really funny sequence where Kate, she has a little bit of a tough breakup with some of the mean girls in her class. Yeah. Can you tell everybody about that? Because I thought it was really funny.
Well, one of the things I loved about this series is that Kate is obsessed with this cartoon called Unicorn Magic. And she has a group of girls who watch the show with her. And then when the show's over, they all get on Zoom and they talk about the episodes. Yeah. And this has been like her obsession for a long time. And the group is called the Cornies. Yeah. And she doesn't understand how that sounds. Right. The Cornies sounds like a great name for a group. I think what happens with a lot of kids, at least it happened with me, is like one day you turn around and all things you really like are no longer cool. Yeah. Like that are kind of embarrassing. Yeah. And like that, I think that happened with me with like Dungeons and Dragons. Like by the time I got into it, it was suddenly not cool anymore. And then I had all this stuff, and like I had a fighter with a +2 sword. I can't just throw that away. So, so that's what happens with Kate is like, the rug is sort of pulled out from under her, and then, she takes it personally, of course. Yes. And and as what happens, unfortunately, as kids get older, is they start to break up into groups, and like that idea that everybody's a friend stops actually being true, and so she struggles, but I think it is, hopefully it's done in a funny way. Yeah, very funny. And is there anything from your childhood like that, that like Dungeons and Dragons or a particular show or a toy where you as an adult have revisited that thing to see if it still held any magic for you? Absolutely. I am obsessed with this show that was on in the early 80s called Greatest American Hero.
Yeah.
I'll tell the kids what it was about. It's about this guy named Ralph who's a high school teacher, and he's out in the desert on some field trip in some weird school where you can take your kids on an overnight field trip to the desert. He meets an FBI agent named William Maxwell.
Yeah.
And while they're out there, they're visited by a UFO. And the aliens come down and give Ralph a suit, a superhero suit that is supposed to give him amazing powers. But on the walk back to the car, he loses the instruction book. And to me, this is like the most perfect story concept ever. Like, he's got a superhero suit that he doesn't even know what it can do. And like the show of him trying to figure out how to fly, that he's bulletproof, how to turn invisible, all these different abilities that he has, just became the fun part of it. And I was obsessed with this.
Yeah.
So I recently pulled it up and showed it to my son, who certified that it was the dumbest show in the history of television. The special effects are terrible. Ralph, they keep changing his last name. Because his last name was Hinckley. And at the time, a man named Hinckley shot President Reagan. So they had to change the character, and they kept changing it. Each week he had a different last name. But the relationship, I think, between Ralph and Maxwell was actually really fun. So, but I would say, does it still hold some magic? I think it still does for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think I could sell it to a kid today. Yeah.
What saved that show was the theme song. It had an all-time great theme song. And if you like really bad things, then you should look up. Did you see that Russia just released their version of Lord of the Rings that came out 20 ago? It's so you can't imagine how bad it is. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. But you have to look it up. It's called The Keepers, but it's based on Lord of the Rings, and it's really bad.
There's an Instagram page, and I don't want to besmirch the great people of Russia. I think we've got a lot of great things from Russia. I'm going to put that up. But there's an Instagram page called Look at This Russian. And I assume it's done by a Russian person. And it is one of the funniest things I see each day on my feed. It's always like people doing things they shouldn't be doing with automobiles and not being safe. It's a very funny thing. Yeah.
I'm sure you could do a version of that about Americans. So tell me a little. It doesn't escape my attention that you have a son named Finn. How much? How close are your fictional Finn and your real Finn?
Well, the real Finn demanded that I name a book after him because I had used so many of his friends' names in my stories. Yeah, and he started to notice that he wasn't in there. And it wasn't that I was trying to keep it from him. I just was looking for the right story. Yeah, and but he was like, "I'm tired of waiting." So, I would say the two characters are, Finn can be a little stubborn sometimes. Yeah. I think that he's a brave kid. Yeah. I think he's funny. I think both Finns are funny. And I think Finn, he doesn't, he's very choosy about his friends. He doesn't have a lot of them, but they're very important to him. Interesting. And I think my son is a lot like that too. Yeah. So these pictures that you paint in the book, they feel to me they feel very real to me. They feel like they exist. And that's just a testament to your imagination. I think you seem to think very cinematically. You have a real vision for what that scene looks like. So what does it look like when you're actually creating those scenes? Paint a picture for me of Michael Buckley creating an alien world. Well, I would say that you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly how I write. I mean, it does feel very cinematic in my head. I mean, I was a bit of a reluctant reader as a kid. There weren't a lot of books that resonated with me until I was a teenager. But movies are a huge thing. So my inspirations are really Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Goonies, Gremlins, E.T., those kind of films. So I tend to write with with a movie frame in my head. So as I'm writing, I really tend to not do it. Sorry, somebody's texting me while I'm doing this and they're writing funny things. Thank you, I appreciate it. But I tend to write it so that it's I'm seeing it like it's a movie in my head. And so the scenes kind of unfold that way. And I've done enough screenwriting in my career so that I understand how that's paced and I just try to write it in a novelization sort of way. And then it'll stay there, and then when I get it down, it kind of goes away, and the next scene pops into my head. I tend to write the books from page 1 to the very last page. I don't skip around. It's like the scenes come to me, in the night sometimes, and then I wake up and they're there.
So you talked about your love of movies. Let's talk about some of your favorite time travel movies. Which ones jump to mind for you?
Well, not only is it my favorite time travel movie, it is my favorite movie of all time. Back to the Future.
Yes.
Is one of the best written, paced, scripted things I've ever seen. When I was in college, I took a screenwriting class, and the professor made us watch Back to the Future and then read the script, and he was convinced it was the greatest screenplay of all time. And then as we were going through it, I was like, it kind of is. I mean, there's no extra fluff. Every scene leads to the next scene. There's nothing nothing is too complicated. And like writing time travel stories is incredibly complicated. And but this is a movie a child can watch and totally understand what is happening. So I love it. I love the dynamic of Marty and Doc, and I just think that, in fact, I love this movie so much. I love the sequels just as much. Other time travel movies, I mean, I remember most of them are terrible, but things that pop out in my head are like Time Cop. Down.
Bill and Ted is the time travel.
Yes.
Different devices.
The Bill and Ted movies are really fun. Hot Tub Time Machine, which children do not watch that. Completely inappropriate. But I remember there was also a movie called, I think it was called Lost in Time. It had Roddy McDowall in it and Christopher Reeve. And Christopher Reeve had gone back in time, and he was hunting Jack the Ripper. That's I do remember that was on cable all the time, and I probably watched it 100 times.
I think, Time. It wasn't Time and Time Again, was it? Something like that.
It's something like that. In fact, I remember the title is kind of boring. It's just like, it's something so just normal that you can't remember what the name of it is.
And how did you feel about Avengers Endgame use of time travel? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I'm going to give it a thumbs up because they were trying to do something different. Like they were, like it's easy to do this thing where it's like, oh, we're going to create a paradox and all this stuff. And it's like what I enjoyed about it, and I tried to do the same thing in my book, is recreate what time travel can be.
Yes.
And I think they did a good job with their own version of it. But I got swept away by those movies. There isn't a word of criticism I have about almost any of those movies. Yeah.
Well, your ending of this story is very exciting, very rewarding, and it was funny because I was listening to the audiobook. I had to get it finished before my dentist appointment. So on top of listening at 2 times speed in my car, the clock was ticking towards my dental appointment. and it finished with 1 minute to spare. So I got extra excitement out of it. But I love the end of this book. It's great. I'm going to ask you a few questions about the 80s because the characters do jump to 1987. So I want you to paint a picture of Michael Buckley, middle school age. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Did you use a lot of hair product? Any mousse?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was really
I mean, look at this. I mean, it's like, if I don't, like, control this, I mean, like, and the thing is, my hair was a lot longer, and it was a mullet, too. That's how I roll, you know?
Yeah. Business in the front.
In the back, business in the front. Yeah, I mean, that's how I roll. So, like, my hair would grow out. I get like a, you know, like Epstein from like Welcome Back, Kotter. I mean, it was like, it's so huge. So yeah, there was lots of mousse in the hair.
Yeah.
Almost everything I wore had extra zippers for some reason. Everything in the 80s had extra zippers.
We grew up in the era of arcades, right? Video game arcades in every corner. Did quarters burn a hole in your pocket? Were you an arcade guy?
I was, and like we didn't have a lot of money when I was a kid, so you know, I became this guy who would just walk up and down the street, knocking on doors, asking people for soda pop bottles that I could take to the rest, you know, like the convenience store and get the deposits on. And, you know, if I got enough bottles, I had enough to play maybe, you know, maybe I get $10 and I burn through that $10. I mean, the game that I loved, there was called Dig Dug.
I knew you were going to say
and I love that game. Like, it makes no sense. I don't know what's happening in it. There's a guy with a pump, and he's digging around in the ground, and he finds dragons because that's what you do, find in the ground. And then he uses the pump to blow them up, and it's horrible.
Blow them up, they burn.
Face value, yeah, they explode, right? It's on a face value. This is really violent. But I loved that game. Yeah.
I recently bought one of those multicade games, and you know, I was like, man, I can play every game I grew. You know, when I played when I was a kid, and I have to say, I was like, it took me back. It was like a time machine, and it didn't. That magic isn't there, you know. And I think I need to have a few friends over who grew up on this stuff, and we need to go head to head or something. Because I'm
so there. I'm so there for that. Yeah.
Come on.
For me, I remember it's like, you know, not quite 87, but a few years younger was sort of like the 80s roller skating craze.
Yeah.
And that would be where I could play video games.
Yeah, same. I did that.
So many of those games I associate with certain songs and things like that. Yeah. So, but yeah, that was all we played. We just roller skated and played video games.
That was my life as well. Now, you were a Star Trek kid, it sounds like. Were you also a Star Wars kid?
Yeah, I loved them both. I mean, my dad took me to see Star Wars, you know, when it opened. And we stood outside this, there was a place called Akron, called Highland Square. It was in Akron. I'm not sure it exists anymore. But it was a movie theater that, you know, you basically had to wait outside. And I remember it was really cold. Yeah. My dad would take us to movies. I'm not sure my dad ever saw it, to be honest. He used movies to take naps. So, you know, he was a divorced dad, so he would take us to the movies. And we saw a lot of movies we shouldn't have seen. Like my brother and I saw, like, I remember we saw Alien, which is horrifying. Saw The Jerk. Yeah. I remember one time he took us, we saw Kramer versus Kramer. This is not something a child wants to see. So there was a constantly like, and then my dad was sleeping all the way through it. You know, I don't think he ever actually saw all of the first Star Wars movie.
I went through a period with my kids where I'd sit down, I'd be perfectly happy to take them to the movies. And then in the first minute of the movie, I'd say, oh, this is a bad one. And then I'd purposefully go to sleep and wake up at the end. We talked a little bit about movies about outer space. Of course, there's space travel in your books. How about you're given the opportunity to go into outer space? Your safety is guaranteed. Would you do it? Do you have that aspiration or excitement?
Yeah, I mean, like if my safety is guaranteed, I absolutely I'd go.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, do I get to come back? That's
yeah. Well, here's a more complicated question then. So you're offered a chance to go to Mars. All right. Yeah. 2 years takes a 2-year chunk out of your life. However, when you come back, because of the way time and space works and all that, when you come back, 10 years have passed on Earth, but you're 2 years older. Would you do it?
No. I'd miss too much of my kid's life, and I think that would be heartbreaking. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I think I would pass on that. Though that would be an amazing experience. I think, he's 13, and by the time I got back, he's 23, and
out of college.
He's figured out I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I need these 10 years to convince him that I know what I'm talking about.
It only gets harder to convince them that you know what you're talking about. Michael, we are going to take a few questions from the audience. I know there were a lot of questions in the right-hand side, including the question, is this all these guys are going to do? No, it's not the only thing we're going to do. Michael is going to now answer your question. So we have 14 questions in the Ask a Question box. We're gonna get 5, right? And then we're gonna see where we are. Okay. So let's do rapid fire.
I feel like we should address that kid who's like, is this all they're gonna do? Like,
well, we're changing it up right now. This is new. Okay.
Whatever you want. All right, kid. Whatever you want.
All right. So, I see. This is the solution to that. Yes. Cassie, why don't you go ahead and give us like the 3rd most upvoted question? How about that?
All right.
Never start with number 1 because then it's all down.
No.
Where did you get your inspiration? This question is from Michael.
Different parts of the book have different inspirations. The new one, the pajamas, when I was a kid, I had a pair of cowboy pajamas that were like also footy pajamas. Yeah, because I was cool. And, and I think that just kind of popped in my head, like putting those on, I just felt almost like a superhero or like I had some kind of ability, like back then they made, pajamas with superhero characters on it. And I always wanted those things. So I think there was like a feeling of power when I had my jammies on.
And Michael, you were a little too old for the underoos phase. You remember that?
No. I remember that.
It was an ensemble. It was a top and a bottom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd wear them now. I haven't outgrown anything.
I couldn't pull that off myself. Cassie, I have another question.
Will there be a 3rd installment in the FINNIVERSE series?
There is. It's called Finn and the Subatomic Slip and Slide. And he uses a super slip and slide to shrink himself down with Lincoln and Julep on a search to find his father, who is on a world that is on a tiny speck underneath his own thumb. I think it's different than the first 2. I mean, I'm always trying to do something different with what I'm writing, even within a series. I think the 3rd one is the best one.
Wow.
I think I've done a good.
Michael, we have something in common, is that we both launched new series during a pandemic. So yay. Yeah. that was a great idea.
That was awesome.
In fact, you didn't yours first book come out like at the worst?
It came out the day. Literally the day every bookstore in the country decided to close.
Yes. Well, I really hope kids discover this series because it's so good. Okay, Cassie, how about
You're
You're welcome.
Zoe wants to know if you could time travel anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I don't know if this is my friend Zoe, but hi Zoe. If I could time travel to anywhere, where would I go? Well, I mean, I'd love to see some dinosaurs. That's for sure. That would be pretty incredible. I'd like to see the pyramids being built, and I think it would be kind of cool to watch the moon landing as it was happening. I mean, there's lots of places I'd love to visit, lots of time periods.
Yeah. How about Michael?
I mean, I think I'd like to go back to Woodstock, watch that.
How about if you had to go back in time and then you were stuck there living out your days, where and when?
You know, the late 60s has some pretty awesome clothes, so I would maybe I'd go there. I'd get to, you know, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones would be still around, and you know, all that stuff. So maybe the late 60s. I don't want to go too far. I like indoor plumbing. I'm a big fan of indoor plumbing. Yeah. So I wouldn't go too far back. Yeah.
All right, Cassie. How about if we'll do one more question from the queue, right? And then I have an idea. All right. So let's get the one more question.
My friend sent me a link for adult underoos, so I'm gonna.
Don't share that with the audience.
Julia loves the Sisters Grimm, and she wants to know where the inspiration for those books came from.
Well, there's a couple of things. I was reading a book about the Brothers Grimm, who are famous for, you know, writing. Well, they didn't actually write anything. That's the thing. They sort of stole these ideas from peasant women who lived in the mountains around where they grew up. But they're kind of famous for Snow White and Cinderella and a lot of the famous fairy tales. And when I was reading about them, I discovered that they came from a very big family. They had lots of siblings, including some sisters. And I think that's where it started. It's like, what is it like to be the Sisters Grimm? And that kind of started the ball rolling. And then, you know, it's not so much now the case, but back when I started writing the Sisters Grimm, there really weren't a lot of great adventure books with girls as the main characters. I mean, there were books for boys where they rode dragons and went to wizarding school, but, you know, for girls, it was like a girl gets to ride a pony over the summer. And I just thought, I don't know any women in my life who would pick a pony ride over riding a dragon. So the inspiration was really to give, you know, young girls, you know, heroes, the kind of people that save the day, who don't need the prince to come and rescue them. They go and rescue the prince themselves. And because those are the kinds of women I had in my life, and still do. And so that was really what I wanted to write was like, you know, I didn't want the girl to be a sidekick. I wanted her to be running the show.
Cool. And so, Cassie, now let's try this. How about if we bring a real kid onto the screen? So
let's do it.
You might have to. So if you ask the question in the question box, keep an eye on it right now, because you're going to be invited to come on screen and talk to Michael. And all you have to do is say accept, and I think that you have to say it like twice. We're going to send out an invitation. Cassie, let's see tell me who you're inviting onto the screen.
I'm inviting Henry on screen. He's accepting.
Oh, there we go. He's ready.
And Henry's very choosy, I know, about who he decides to talk to. So this is going to be good.
I'm not sure.
All right. Do I hear a sound?
I hear him.
I hear, but don't.
I'm sorry. We're trying to fix the situation.
Okay.
I think Henry fell down a hill.
Right. So Henry, we're going to listen very carefully. You ask your question, and then we'll see if Michael can hear it. Okay.
Yeah, I was right. Henry fell.
like I said, Michael, it's a little hit or miss to invite somebody onto the screen, but we're going to try again because what could possibly go wrong?
No.
Cassie, let's go. Let's invite. Tell me who you're inviting next.
All right. Billy has another question,
Okay.
but she's not accepting. Oh, there she is. She's accepting. Let's
All
see if
right.
we can
Okay.
There we go.
My feelings are hurt for a minute there. No.
I've done these question and answer things recently where we carve out like 20 minutes for the Q&A and then nobody asks a single question.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
guys, we can't go out like this. You have to, if you get invited and you can point the camera in your room, we have to get one real kid on the screen and then we'll call it a night.
I would say the most asked question I get is, do you know Jeff Kinney?
Okay.
That's honestly, I get that question every time I do it.
And is he a jerk, like they say? All right, I'm going to ask you one more question while we're waiting. Let's say the world opens up fully, and you can do anything you want. What's the most ordinary thing that you can't wait to do again?
I want to go to a restaurant, sit inside, have somebody wait on me, and order tacos. That's all I've been thinking about for a year and 3 months now. Like, I want someone to wait on me. I will tip them very well. I want to feel like a civilized human being, and I want to eat my weight in tacos.
But you can't. Oh, here we go. Here's a real kid. All right, what's your name, buddy?
My name is James.
James.
Hey,
awesome.
James.
James, you have a question for Michael. What is it?
Yeah. So you wrote a lot of books. So what would be what was one of the most favorite books? Like, what was the most favorite books that you made?
Well, I love all my children the same, but I would say, my favorite one, that's hard to say. I mean, of course, the new book I'm super excited about, so I would say that might be my favorite. But the one I really loved writing was the 5th Sisters Grimm book. It's called Magic and Other Misdemeanors. Yeah. And it's also a time travel story. The girls go into the future and they see themselves as adults, and they do not like what they see. And they go back to their time and try to fix everything so they don't turn out the way they turn out. So I had a lot of fun writing that. Like I said, Back to the Future is my favorite movie, so it really does inspire me quite a bit. But I don't know if I'm going to write any more time travel stories. These are so complicated. It's really hard to keep track of everything. It's hard to explain it. But when you're in it, it's like, oh, this is so fun.
Wait, what is the book called? Because I might want to read that. What is it called?
It's called Magic and Other Misdemeanors. It's the 5th Sisters Grimm book.
Yeah.
Michael,
I love, I was looking over your old books today, your first books, and those covers are so great. I mean, your cover on your new book is great also. Those are sort of classic, right? In a different, what was it like to be an author, to write that and then to see it come back to you as through somebody else's imagination?
Yeah. I think that in the very beginning, before I ever saw anything, I was very anxious about it. Okay. Because there are a lot of ugly books out there. Yeah. And I thought, oh, what if it happens to me? And I wanted to control the process because I'm an egomaniac. And but then when the art came in, the artist on Sisters Grimm, his name is Peter Ferguson. Yeah. And I was just blown away by it. Yeah. And just so moved that somebody was able to make art from my art. Somebody was inspired and saw it in their head, and this is what came out. And it's really humbling to see that. So each time a new book would come out, I would get super excited about seeing what Peter was going to send me.
Yeah.
And it was always different. I mean, I don't think I ever had a single note for him. He
Wow.
just seemed to understand it. And I also, I think that for me, I mean, like with you, you're illustrating everything you're writing. For me, I kind of enjoyed stepping back and letting somebody else just do their thing.
Yeah.
And I would say I've never been disappointed. Everything I've written, I've had amazing illustrations.
I agree. You've been very lucky in that regard. I think,
Yeah.
Cassie, why don't we risk one more kid to bring? Let's see what happens. We just saw the underground fort bunker of our last guest on screen. That's his Zoom cave, I think. It's a it's a term for it. So we're gonna try one more.
I'm inviting you on screen.
Here we go. Who are we gonna get?
Oh, who is it going to be? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Dave Chappelle.
All right.
Wouldn't that?
Oh, here we go.
I'm not really a kid, but I'm waiting to get on with Bonnie and her group at 7. But I just really found this very fascinating.
Well, Michael,
Hi.
Thank you for saying hello. And yeah, Michael is a
For
very
a second there, I thought maybe we had tapped into somebody else's Zoom.
No,
For
well,
a second.
we are waiting for that one coming up.
she's in for the
Well,
next
thanks for joining.
But I was really wondering if there was a topic or a storyline that you've been considering, but just haven't been able to figure out how to make that happen.
Oh, I've got tons of those.
Tons of those?
Yeah, like I have a lot of faith in how things are supposed to unfold. So if something isn't working or I don't know what is going to happen, I just put it back in the drawer and I let my subconscious do the heavy lifting. And I would say more often than not, if it's a book I'm supposed to write, and I do believe in that, like these are certain books that I should be writing, and those are the books that are demanding my attention. That's how I decide what to write. If I don't have it right away, it will eventually come. And it's just not ready to be written. So, but yeah, I've probably got 5 or 6 stories that I keep picking at, trying to figure out how they work. And I sit down and revisit them from time to time. And sometimes they open up to me, and sometimes the door stays closed, and I just wait for it to open.
Very cool. Great question.
And the other part of my question was, what influenced you either reading or writing when you were younger? How did you get motivated?
Well, I was a bit of a reluctant reader, to be honest, as a kid. We didn't have a lot of money for books, so there weren't a lot in the house. My mom liked to read, but she had, typical housewife kind of taste. So, like, we read a lot of Irma Bombeck books. So I know a lot of what it means to be a suburban mom. So it wasn't until I was in the 4th grade when a librarian at my school noticed that I hadn't really been checking any books out. And she cornered me once and shoved a book in my hand, and it turned out to be The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. And I read it, and because she demanded that I read it, and scary, so I did it. And but it turned out to be one of the most important things I ever did. It hit all of the buttons that I wanted as a 4th grade boy. It was funny. It was a big adventure. It didn't have a big, heavy-handed moral lesson that reading that book wasn't supposed to make me a better person. And that's really what I wanted. I wanted a book where I could just sit in the window when it was raining and laugh. And until that book, I didn't realize those existed. So I would say that book led to other really other books that really inspired me. Roald Dahl has been a huge influence on me. Everything he wrote, I love. Who else? The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton is still a super important story for me. But there, as an adult writers, I would say John Steinbeck and Truman Capote had a big influence on me. I got kind of a late start when it came to books, and but then when I got the right one, that was all it took.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Michael, we have to wrap up. Thank you very, very much again. And Cassie's probably going to tell us how to order this book. You click on the green button below, but you really should start from the beginning because the first book is great too. And so I hope you'll read these books. I hope this series takes off because it really deserves to. And Michael, we will see you down the line.
Yes, thanks a lot, guys. I just want to say thank you, not only to Jeff but to the store. An Unlikely Story is, you guys are really lucky. The kids who are near you are really lucky to have that store.
Thank you.
So many towns don't have a place like that, and I'm really in awe of what you've created there.
Thank you. We hope you'll come by in person one day. That'd be really fun.
I'm gonna get in the car right now.
Not too soon.
How late are you open?
All right. Thanks again, Cassie. You'll tune this out. You'll take us out, right?
Thanks, Cassie.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jeff. You click the green button to purchase Michael's books. You can purchase 1, 2, and I think you can pre-order 3. And we also have all of the Sisters Grimms and Nerds available on our website. Click that green button. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Have a great night.